Your station, 101 FM, with Saturday Sports Scene.
Hello and welcome to Sports Scene for another week. Kevin Braysher here with you as always, taking you through all the big issues in sport from around Australia and the rest of the world. Joining me at the desk as always, Mr. Craig Crowley from the Southport Sharks. Craig, welcome to the show.
G'day Kev, a bit hectic this morning.
It is, it's a bit of a rush schedule we had this morning, but we're in here, we're ready to go and there's plenty to talk about. Also joining us on the line, Mr. Darren Madigan, welcome to the show.
Good morning, people. I hope everyone's high and dry.
It is. It's been a tough week. A lot of wet weather, a lot of dangerous winds and all the rest of it. So hopefully everyone got through it safely and with the minimum amount of damage to their property and all the rest of it, because it was some wild times early in the week, wasn't it?
Oh, it's unbelievable. What was it like up there, Darren?
Well, we had the system at the start for about 2 or 3 days up around Atherton, Mareeba, just sitting over the top of us spinning. And then a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and then eventually it worked its way down the coast. And well, you've seen the rest of it.
Yeah.
But poor old Bundaberg, they're really, they're really copping it. And if you know the town well, the way the river runs through the middle, like it does in a lot of the coastal towns up and down Queensland, it's not good.
It's still great though, Darren, to see the people all chip in and helping each other. Obviously, learning a lot from the 11 floods. So it's really good to see they're all dingy-die Australians and batting for each other.
Yeah, I think the what I've learned certainly, because I actually spent a fair bit of time covering that for another radio station a year or two ago, and I just had, you just didn't realise how strong the community spirit was.
Yeah.
We knew in country Queensland that it was very, very strong, but in Brisbane it was always a bit doubtful. But tell you what, you never doubted after that.
Yeah, terrific.
That's it. Guys, we'll look at the sporting results over the last 24 hours or so in the cricket. What a result this was yesterday. The West Indies all out for 70. I bet you didn't think we'd get a lower score than what we saw Australia against Sri Lanka a couple of weeks ago, but West Indies all out for 70. Australia 1 for 71. That's a 9-wicket victory. Glenn Maxwell 51 from 35. He was the star at the bat. Mitchell Starc 5 for 20. He was 4 for 1 at one stage. It was ridiculous. Yeah, never seen anything like that. Well, we saw it a few weeks back, but yeah, this was an incredible result from the Australians, and really, I guess, guys like Glenn Maxwell really stamped his authority on this game, and he got promoted to opener. He just did an unbelievable job.
Yeah, it was quite strange, actually, seeing the way the format that he batted. He went up there playing pretty much T20 type cricket, and I don't know if that was to overcome the bounce of the pitch or the swing of the ball or whatever the case, or to, as you said, stamp his authority on the one-day format, but at the end of the day, he was, he was tremendous. 51.
It was very good. It was a very good result for the Australians. We'll talk about the cricket at about 8:45. In the A-League, Brisbane Roar got a 2-all draw against the Central Coast. They were down at 1.1-0, and then they came back to a 2-1 lead, and then it draws up at all time. But they showed signs of their best there, with Barisha getting 2 goals. But again, they're leaving it a little late, but they're still in contention. They find themselves in the top 6 with that draw, and if they can get there, anything can happen. And I'm sure the Brisbane Roar side that nobody at that top end of the table will want to just sneak into the final, because they'll be really dangerous. In the NBL, the New Zealand Breakers, another win. That's their 9th straight. 98-81 over the Perth Wildcats. Big win over the second place Perth side there over in New Zealand. Cedric Jackson, 22 points, was the main man. Wollongong Hawks, 86 over the Adelaide 36ers, 78 as well. In the netball, Darren, I know this one's for you. It was earlier in the week. England completed the 3-0 series sweep, 58-51 over Australia. We talked about it a little bit last week. It was shocking. We said, surely it couldn't happen. Well, it has happened. We've gone down 3-0 to England.
Yeah, 3-0 to England. I won't say we predicted it, because we did. we actually said last week, why not? They're already 2-0 up. I did actually say that sarcastically. I didn't expect it to actually happen. But taking a look at the side, we fielded pretty much the best side we could, given the players that we've actually got over there. And I tell you what, even when you look at the teams that were fielded, especially the second and third game, this result should not have happened. So there'll be a lot of post-mortems when they get back to Australia. You can bet on that.
Darren, maybe a rotation policy. What do you think?
What, you mean it's not already in place? It certainly seems like it, looking at the way some of the names that aren't there should be there. Look, it's a disgraceful result. It's not good for Australian netball. It's great for the game, I think, as it brings a fourth team genuinely into the world arena. But, gee, what can you say? I mean, 3-0 down to England, Australia, the world champs. What's going on?
Before we go on any further, I want to welcome Lee Hanatschek to the studio. He's just ducked in there in the middle of our conversation. Lee, very big welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kev.
Yeah, we almost missed you there, but we're glad to have you on for the rest of the show. It'll be good fun. Talking of the rest of the show, heaps to talk about. Our NRL and AFL season previews continue. In the NRL, we'll talk about the Roosters, the Knights and the Titans. In the AFL, we'll start from the bottom there. We've got GWS, the Gold Coast Suns and the Melbourne Demons. Lots to talk about there. It's only a few weeks' time and then we'll be there. Can we see, just very briefly, can we see some improvement in those bottom AFL sides this year? Are they going to lift themselves? The Suns going into their third season in particular, are they on their way up?
They've got to be.
Yeah.
Quite simply.
Yeah.
Quite simply, they've got to be on the way up. There's no if, buts, maybes on that. Would you agree there, Craig?
The Suns, yeah, and look, I was pretty impressed with the GWS. I think they showed a lot of potential. I reckon their lists they've got at the moment are quite good. Melbourne, Richmond. Sorry, Darren, I just don't see it, mate.
Tell you what, there's talk down in Melbourne that they're going to be shooting for a top 4 position this year. Richmond.
Who from?
From Richmond.
You know you can't get past ninth, mate, so we'll cut it there.
Yeah, thanks for that. Look, it's, I think out of the 3 teams, probably the Gold Coast, taking a look at what they've got, would have to make the most improvement, but it's a relative thing, isn't it? I mean, how many more wins on top of what did they get? 2 or 3 last year? I think it was 3.
Yeah.
They might double that this year, but I mean, I think they're still a while away from contending for that top 8.
As we say, we'll talk about that as well as the NRL preview a little bit later in the second hour of the show. We'll also talk about the 17-man squad name for the Indian tour for the Australian side going over there. A little bit of controversy. There's only 1 wicket keeper, there's only 6 batmen, and there's 3 all-rounders in the squad. So a little bit of a strange makeup in that squad, but we'll talk about that a little later on in the show. And straight after the first break, we'll talk about the biggest sporting event that's happened this week in Australia, Mundine versus Geale II. We'll go through that. There's a lot to talk about in that fight. If you want to get involved in the show, send us a text message on 0429 506 704. That's 0429 506 704. We'll take a break now. When we come back, it's time for Mundine versus Geale II.
Parkridge Pharmacy, proud sponsors of the 101 FM Radiothon. 101 FM are offering your business a 2-for-1 on-air promotion with complimentary production. Give your business a kickstart by simply calling 101 FM on 38088 101.
Life. Life is for living, so live it. Life. Life is for giving, so give it. Giving blood is cool. Needing it isn't. Red Cross. Give a little. Life is for living. Life is for giving. Help save lives. Please give blood.
A perfect way to complete your weekend. Sunday nights at 8. Join us for Popular Classics on 101 FM.
You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Yes, welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you, taking you through all the big happenings in the world of sport. And this week there's been no bigger talking point in the world of sport, at least in Australia, than Mundine versus Geale II at the City Entertainment Centre on Wednesday night. Daniel Geale retains his IBF middleweight world title by unanimous points decision. 2 judges scored at 117 to 111. The other scored at 116 to 112. It was a pretty clear win, I think, on Geale's part. Pretty much everybody thinks it was a clear win except for one man.
Oh no,
the man.
He was robbed. He was robbed.
He seems to be. Him and Sonny Bill Williams seem to be the only 2 people that think Mundine won that fight.
Can I just ask a question of the board? Does anyone know of anyone who wanted Mundine to win? Apart from himself and his camp.
I don't know. I don't think so. Look, there probably was. There's no doubt. Look, he's a champion. You can't, refute that. But the thing is, at the end of the day, if you talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And, then he probably should have, beaten by 3 judges, not a split decision. So why he can't just be man enough to say, okay, I was beaten, move on to the next port of call and attack that. But no, he just drags it on. It just makes him look worse.
I've said in the past that Mundine is possibly one of the most talented athletes we've seen in this country. Naturally talented. We've seen him play rugby league, we've seen him box, we've seen him... Whatever he put his hand to, he's very good at, apart from talking.
Oh.
He just can't... If he just kept his mouth shut, and he would be fine. But he talks himself as a role model for the Aboriginals and things like that. I'm sorry, but yes, on the sporting field you are. But as soon as you start opening your mouth, you're not. But back to the fight, Geale just too good.
He was, wasn't he? He was just, it seemed Mundine was very much on the defensive the whole fight. I thought, I saw the whole thing. I went down to a bar and watched it like many others would have. It just felt like Geale was in control of the whole fight. It was just on another level that was just to my eyes. Darren, how did you read the whole thing?
Well, you hit the nail on the head too, by the way, by saying you went down to a bar, because $50 for something like that is just absolutely ridiculous. But isn't it great? It's the only time you'll ever come across where legally you can sit there and say, I want to see a guy get smacked in the mouth, and he can get it done. It's part of the sport.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the bottom line is, Lee hit the nail on the head. Keep your mouth shut, dude. I mean, go out there, win us back by doing the stuff in the ring.
Yeah, okay? You're right.
Win us back by doing that. Don't go out and do stupid things like don't want to listen to the anthem and saying you're the best athlete ever and all this sort of rubbish that nobody's ever going to believe in a million years. Go out and win us back in the ring. I don't think it's going to happen anyway.
Well, I'll throw in the argument with Mundine in that in boxing, I know you might disagree with me when I say this, Darren, but I have no problem with a guy who is mouthy in boxing. If he wants to run his mouth and all the rest of it, even if he can't quite back it up, because it's all about promoting the fight for him. It's about getting people to buy the fight. It's about getting people to buy tickets. And if they want to see him get beaten, you said at the top, Lee, who wanted to see him win? Well, it doesn't matter if people didn't want to see him win. Everyone wanted to see him lose, which is why people went down to watch the fight. Yeah. So to my mind, I don't have a huge problem with him mouthing off about it, even after the fight, if he wants to carry on. To me, that just enhances the bad guy image that you want to see him get beat, which to him drives up the amount of money he's worth and the amount of people that he draws through the gates.
Kevin, it depends on what you're mouthing off about, though. Yeah,
that's what I was about to say, Darren. I agree with that. If he's mouthing off and, saying Geale, you can't fight, you can't do that. But when he starts to bring in about, whether Geale is his heritage and he's not really an Aboriginal and, he married a white girl and all of that stuff.
Tom, all the rest of it,
That's just, that's off limits. Yeah. It's just off limits. If he's talking about the fight and talking about how he's going to smack Geale and he's going to knock him out, and no problem at all. But when you start bringing things outside the ring and slandering all of that, that's when I lose it.
And just remember, too, the sport that he came from, if he had said what he said, he not only would he not be playing, he'd be in grave danger of being deregistered.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, no club would touch him.
Well, he did say things like that when he was in rugby league. He always claimed he never made more rep teams because of racism. That's what he always claimed, even though Laurie Daly was the one ahead of him in the New South Wales side, and he's Indigenous himself. Didn't really hold a lot of water.
He was playing?
Yes, he did.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But that was... 10 years ago,
it was.
So times have changed. But, the big thing is, let's talk about the good side of it. And how good of an ambassador is Daniel Geale for the sport of boxing?
Yeah, let's talk about Daniel Geale, because he was terrific in this fight. And to my mind, he won, not just did he win this middleweight title, I don't think it was ever really in doubt for him. I think he was on another level to Mundine. I think what he really gains out of this is mainstream popularity and mainstream acceptance that he perhaps didn't have before that. Because he's beaten Mundine now, and say what you want about him, Mundine is the mainstream name of boxing in this country. For Geale to come out and beat the mainstream name of boxing in this country, suddenly Geale is a much bigger draw in Australia than he was before. Even if he was winning titles and winning fights, now he's a much bigger draw.
Do you reckon in this situation, though, and it was a very valid point what you said about the promotional side of it, has Geale got the personality, and I'm not saying trash talk-wise, because if he is our main draw card in boxing, has he got the personality to get the bums on the seat to keep the sport going? Now, that's one thing Mundine has done. He's made people talk about boxing, regardless of the fact, the big three, the Green, Geale and Mundine, of course. And Danny Green can sell it. I don't know if Geale can sell a fight.
He hasn't been able to in the past, and I think that's been what he gains out of this, perhaps.
Yeah, I reckon this will change him. And it'll also, I feel, as that he gave boxing some respect.
Yep.
In the way in which he's handled himself. And, to rock up the next day, it's a great PR. You couldn't ask for a better PR stunt. Take his daughter to kindergarten the next day.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
That is perfect for the image of boxing to say, okay, we are trying to clean this thing up.
Mm-hmm. On that too, his wife, when they interviewed her, that's water off a duck's back. She sort of discarded, what Anthony Mundine said, is the fact that, she still remembers it, but she's not going to hold a grudge. The whole family was a great presence for boxing in that regard.
Darren, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I think we're sort of missing the point in terms of the sport itself, though. I think the sport's got a long, long way to go to get credibility back in general. And I think the only way to do that is, let's forget about PR for a second. Let's just get...
Easy now.
No, seriously, let's get a couple of guys out there like Daniel Geale on the world stage actually performing and actually win a few decent fights, make a name for themselves overseas like Costa Zoo did before, and all the names that we had beforehand. They could do it without opening their mouths.
Yeah.
And, they still managed to pull the big money and the big crowds and the big fights. So let's get some guys out there, get them to perform, and then we can worry about having, a Muhammad Ali wannabe coming back into the fold in Australia. I mean, I just want to see the sport of boxing gain some credibility again because, I grew up loving the sport, but it lost me in the 90s.
Yeah, Darren.
And it hasn't won me back yet.
Darren, I certainly agree with you with the Costa Zoo, and I think that's one thing Daniel Geale did make a comment on. He said they asked about a rematch with Mundine, and he simply turned around and said, no, I've got bigger fights to fight. I've got my eyes set on bigger prizes, which is what you need. And as I refer to Costa Zoo there. I actually spent a day with him doing a PR day, Darren.
Well, don't go there.
A couple of years ago, and he was one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Family guy, and when you look at the comparisons between him and Daniel Geale, they're probably very similar personalities, very likeable characters, and genuine people from what the dealings that I've been able to see with them.
Darren, sorry, mate, just on the promotional side of it while you're there, is it a situation while we're nationally bound that we have to sort of look at doing our own sort of promotions and work hard from there whether to get the best possible dollars? When we go international, there is a promotion promoters there that'll actually take that on board and let the boxers box. So that's probably why there's not as much, obviously they'll use the boxers as much as they can, but there's a promoter going out there to really sell the fight. So as soon as Geale does go international, he won't have to worry about this sort of thing.
Yeah, and look, it just depends on where he is too. I mean, whether he goes to the United States or whether he ends up in a place like England, where he's fighting at 2 a.m. in the morning to allow for television and pay-per-view, which goes on, as we know. Yeah. Those sort of things happen. I mean, you're right. Once they head overseas, they're in the hands of another promoter.
Yeah.
But for me at the moment, it's about seeing the sport gain its credibility back and, getting some of those names back on people's lips saying, oh, yeah, I know that. He's a fighter. He's a welterweight or whatever. He's an Australian dude. He's about to fight for a title overseas. We don't have that at the moment.
Well, I will step in and defend Daniel Geale on this one. He's been to Germany twice and come back with the title, which is something... twice on points decisions as well, which is a massive, massive achievement. The point I make with him is a lot of people have never taken notice of that until this fight. Perhaps moving forward, Daniel Geale can be that guy. And, instead of Mundine being the bad guy drawing the pay-per-view buys, they want the good guy, the guy they want to cheer for. They'll buy and watch that fight. Perhaps that's what this will do for Daniel Geale and, in correlation for boxing in Australia. You're listening to Sportzscene here on 101 FM. It's 25 minutes past 8. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you. Just quickly to wrap up the Mundine Geale stuff, where does Mundine go from here? Is he staring down the barrel of retirement, or does he go on and have a rematch with Danny Green? The last big paycheck thing I think can come from this.
Retire, go home, go somewhere.
Well, I think, to be fair, I think he did fight probably better than people give credit for the other night. He was just beaten in every round. I think he fought well but didn't win the fight. I think he probably still has a little bit left in him, but I don't know that people are that interested in him anymore.
I think the only thing that be interesting if he does refight Green, just to see how long it would take Green to knock him out, because all of Australia will be behind Green in that fight.
They were all behind him last time, and Mundine beat him pretty comfortably, to be fair.
In the situation here, like if Geale was beaten, just hypothetical, yes, I reckon it would snowball, and he would go on, and Geale would, try to
challenge him
rematch again. Yeah. So at the end of the day, because this has happened to him, and Mundine trying to make excuses why, it just doesn't sound like he has got a next situation.
No.
It doesn't look like he's pre-planned.
No,
in this case.
Yeah, I don't want to be thinking like this about an Australian. I don't want to be thinking like this about a very good Australian sportsman. And, as far as I'm concerned, mate, just retire, go away. There are some people in sport that you don't necessarily need to have them in the sport. And, I don't want to be thinking like the way I'm thinking right now about an Australian sportsman, especially one who in the past has proven he's very good at what he does. But, because of his mouth, he's lost everyone.
Well, he's 37 years old now. I think time's starting to catch up with him a little bit. And perhaps now the torch of the main man in Australian boxing has been passed to Daniel Geale. And I hope that is the case, because I think he's a guy a lot of Australia will want to get behind. Before we go to the next break, I just want to touch on it quickly. I don't know if we saw the semi-main event before that fight with Kimbo Slice and Daniel Tilliard. That reaction tells me that Lee definitely saw it.
I saw highlights.
It was hugely entertaining. It was as poor a technical fight as you'll probably see anywhere. It was nothing but haymakers, but it was so entertaining. Daniel Tilliard, he went out there with the Homer Simpson approach to defence, and just, if you've seen the episode of The Simpsons where Homer becomes a boxer, he just stands there and lets the guy punch him until he gets tired. Tilliard just would not defend anything, and Kimbo's just hitting him and he wouldn't move. It was so entertaining, but it was crazy. Lasted a round and a half, and he went down. It was a left hook to the ribs that ended up knocking him out, but it was so entertaining.
Yeah, it was the battle of the big boys, and the big boys just... It was like you're watching a D-grade football match.
That's exactly
and
what it was like.
forward and full back
Really what it was
in
like.
the 80s have just gone at it. They had no style. They couldn't move. They had nothing. And they just simply sat there and tried to smack each other out.
I'll tell you what, though, the crowd really gathered at the bar I was at for that and got excited for it. It was so entertaining.
Was it along the lines of a promotional footballers battle, like I think Ronnie Andrews and Mark Jackson had a hit out? Or
No,
not even.
That was probably better quality.
Exactly. At one point, Kimbo actually went in, he sort of tackled him and dragged him halfway across the ring, and it was madness, but it was so entertaining.
But entertaining.
It was so entertaining. Got people. That's what people wanted to see. And I think at the end of the fight, Kimbo said he wanted to thank his trainers for turning him from a fighter into a revolution, which I thought was hilarious as well. So I thought, mate, come on.
But Kimbo's 12 and zip. I think.
Seven now. Seven
zip, is
yeah,
it?
he started, for those who don't know Kimbo Slice, he started as a street fighter and he had all his stuff on YouTube. That's how he got big from that, just fighting bums and stuff. And then he went to MMA, he got beat up a couple times once he came up against some real fighters. And now he's in boxing and he's beaten up on more nobodies, I guess. But yeah, Daniel Tilliard, everyone was behind him. I really wanted him to pull off the upset, and I felt like he was going to at one stage, but unfortunately he ran out of gas and went down. But yeah, we'll leave the boxing discussion there. That was a really entertaining fight, I will say. We've got to go to a break now. We'll come back with you shortly.
Youth activities are a large part of the Lions Club's programs. For more than 30 years, the Lions Youth of the Year quest has encouraged student interest in leadership and the qualities required for active and constructive participation in the community. Under the auspices of Lions, Leo clubs give young people leadership, experience, opportunity and fellowship through involvement in community service. For more information on these programs, visit lionsclubs.org.au.
You decide to shave for the Leukemia Foundation's World's Greatest Shave. Your new look makes you brave. Brave enough to rescue a kitten. Your deed attracts media attention, which leads to your chin appearing on posters. Lots of posters. Seen from space-size posters. Hollywood types cast you in their next remake. You win a Chin Academy Award, release a man scent, and have your chin immortalized on a commemorative mug. Boom! You're the man. Shaving might change your life, but it will change the lives of people with blood cancer. Be brave and shave. Sign up now at worldsgreatestshave.com.
Tune into Album Contemporary 11th of February, 7pm till 10pm for a special feature on the British invasion. Those bands and artists that changed the world, and not just in music, from 1963 to 1969 and beyond. The so-called invasion was a catalyst for extraordinary movement across the globe in attitudes, fashion, politics, and so much more. This is a 3-hour presentation of the songs that brought about the New World Order in contemporary music in your city, your station, 101 FM.
Hi, I'm Nikki Buckley with a tip on how you can support Coast Care. Now, when boating, use biodegradable oil in your 2-stroke engine whenever possible and always anchor securely in a sandy space. The reefs and seagrass beds can be damaged when anchors are allowed to shift. For more coastline information, call 1800 603 772.
101 FM.
Now back to Darren Madigan and Karen Mitchell with Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Yes, welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you, taking you through all the big issues in sport from the last week. Before we go any further, it's time to talk about the Australian Open. It wrapped up last weekend before, in between shows here. The women's final, Victoria Azarenka up over Lee Na, 4-6, 6-4, 6-3. We predicted it before the match went on, but she was not the crowd favourite. Victoria Azarenka didn't get a lot of response from the crowd, but to her credit, she fought back from a set down and proved why she's the world number one, Darren.
She did, and look, her performance was fantastic. Well, I mean, I predicted, and I think Craig did as well, that Lee Na would probably get up, but, 3-setter, it was finally, we had a women's final that did the match justice, but I do need to say, though, that some of our colleagues in the business, the way they treated Victoria Azarenka going into the final, because of what happened the day before or day or two before, it was just ridiculous. I mean, to put her in the same class as Ben Johnson and some of the other things that they did was just a disgrace. It really was. It was something we shouldn't see in our papers. But anyway, that's the performance. Vicky was fantastic. Lee Na had her break as well during the match. But what can you say? It was a great performance. Unfortunately, not long after that, with all the storms and everything that went on, we actually lost Channel 7 up here in North Queensland. So we didn't get to see much tennis after that.
Darren, do you think the injuries to Lee Nan, with her rolling her ankle and then rolling her ankle again, hitting her head, and, what else could go wrong for her? Seriously, I mean, she still put up a really good fight.
Yeah, she did. And look, she's a gutsy player. I mean, it was a little bit refreshing to see these two players in a big final for once. I mean, they've played off in finals before, these two, and they have a bit of history. But to see them play off in a slam final was nice to see compared to some of the others there. I mean, I can do without the screeching and yelling that goes on from Victoria. But I don't know if we're ever going to get rid of that out of women's tennis. I don't know how you get rid of it. I think it's a generational thing. Yeah. And the only way to do it is possibly to actually start taking points off players.
Hey, Darren, just the situation with Lee Na, do you put her along a line or a lot like Andy Murray in the situation he was in, that he was always very, very competitive until he won his first major, and then he's just seemed to be more, he is one of the real contenders now. Is she do you align her a little bit like that?
I think she's had probably more pressure on her than most. I mean, it's, she's basically not only been the best and probably only decent professional to come out of her country, but it's the most populous nation on earth as well, and the sport, when we talk about the sport growing in a country like China, we'll talk about how many thousand courts are going to be built this year. Not like 10 or 50 or something like that. We're talking thousands.
Thousands.
Hundreds of thousands of players coming on deck and stuff. So you can just imagine. We talk about the English all the time and the British putting pressure on their players to actually win something. But can you imagine what it's like for her? Yeah. And she's won 1 out of 3 now, 1 out of 3 finals. It's hard to say with women's tennis sometimes, but I think she's the genuine article. She's a very, very good player. She was a good doubles player before that. I think she's always going to be up there in that top 10 to top 5 ranking. I don't think you'll see her as one of the all-time greats or anything like that. But I think she's going to have a very, very good career, and I think she's got a few finals left in her.
Well, we're talking about a guy who's going to have a very good career, but could potentially have a great career. Andy Murray, he went down to Novak Djokovic in 4 sets. It was 6-7, 7-6, 6-3, 6-2. The longer it went on, the more comfortable Novak seemed to get. But for Andy Murray, we'll talk about this one first. It's 5 out of 6 Grand Slam finals he has lost now. 5 out of 6, so for him to have the one Grand Slam, he's got the ability to win much more than the one Grand Slam. For this one, it's very strange what happened. In the second set tiebreak, he was going for a second serve, and a feather falls down into his view, which he goes and moves it out of the way, and then he double faults, and he loses that tiebreak. From there, it seemed his injury started to niggle at him. The crowd started to get to him. You could see him just start to mentally unravel. How much do those past losses then play on his mind and everything else? And how tough has he got to be next time he's in a final, knowing he's 5 and 6 in the loss column?
Just quickly, Kev, one thing you forgot there was his feet.
Yes, the feet as well.
The blisters on his feet from playing over the last few days of 5 setters and 4 hours, and just to actually be there, I think was a huge effort.
It was. The 5-setter he had against Roger Federer was a great one, but it seemed once he went down that second set, that stuff started to play on him more. Like, if he was up 2 sets to love, I think he could have pushed through the foot pain and all the rest of it, but it started to play on his mind, and he knew, I've lost these finals before. It seemed to get to him.
Yeah, he choked.
Oh.
I mean, look,
big call for the big man.
Well, he did. I mean, at the end of the day, there are all the other top players have been through this. I mean, guys like Rafa played 10, 11 hours a couple of years ago to win the tournament in 2 days. They get through this. I mean, injuries are injuries. You play through them, and it's not like they're out there belting each other and tackling each other. I mean, he went out. He had some stuff going on. It got to him, and he lost yet another one. He can take some solace, though, in knowing that his coach, who is one of the greatest players of all time, lost his first few finals as well and went on to win great. And we didn't know that about Ivan Lendl when he lost those finals, that he was going to go on and be so good.
Darren, are we starting to put Andy Murray in a category then that he's not worthy of? Like, we're trying to put him up with Federer, Djokovic, Nadal. Is he like Lena in that regard? He's probably just... Is he batting above his...
Thereabouts, but not quite there, you mean?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, is he playing well enough? Is he at his absolute limit? It's not as good as what he's playing against.
I think his best is not as good as Federer or Djokovic's best. I think he is a genuine number 3 or 4 in the world at the moment. I mean, that's the best I can give you on that. I think we have probably overhyped him a bit.
Yeah.
I think everyone has overhyped him a bit because he comes across as a nice guy, and we want to see him win. And he's got an entire nation. He's the first Brit. That we went through this business with Tim Henman for year after year after year when we went to Wimbledon all the time. Well, Andy Murray's had to put up with this for the last few years, and finally, he won one, got the monkey off the back, won the Olympic gold medal, and everybody's thinking, okay, that the floodgates are going to open. I never thought that at all, because look at what he's got to play against.
Well, let's talk about that genuine world number 1, and that is Novak Djokovic. He's now won 3 consecutive Australian Opens, the first man to ever do it in the Open era. That's his 4th Australian Open all up. He's finished the last 2 years as the world number 1, going into a 3rd year, not slowing up a bit. How much he's still young enough to he probably won't get to 17, 18 like Federer has, but he's got enough time to really push up his Grand Slam wins. How close is he going to finish when his career comes down? Will he be considered one of the all-time greats, Darren? I think he probably will be at this rate.
I think he'll be considered one of the greats, but I think when you're talking about Federer, you've got to look at the numbers, and the numbers are ridiculous. Right? What Djokovic has done so far has been great, but if you actually look at Federer's numbers, they are inhuman.
Yeah, well, Federer is an exception to the rule. I think if we just stick with Novak and how good he has been, taken on credit instead of comparing to Federer, he is a genuinely great player.
He's a genuinely great player, and I think you'll probably find by the time he finishes his career, and I hate doing this so early, but by the time he finishes his career, we're going to talk of him probably in the same vein as your McEnroes, your I won't say Sampras because I think Sampras is one of the top 3 of all time, but people like Agassi. You know where I'm going with this?
Yes.
That next level down from the top 3 or 4 players who have ever lived.
Right.
Which I personally rate as Federer, Laver, Sampras, and probably Borg after that.
Fair enough. Well, we'll leave the tennis there. We'll be back again the same time next year for the Australian Open. We all love it. Listening to Sportzscene here on 101 FM. It's 19 minutes to 9. That's when your next fresh news update will be. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you. It's time to talk a little bit of football. Before we get into the A-League, I think some unsurprising news came through just yesterday. David Beckham has not signed with the A-League. He's signed to play in Paris. I know. But the big thing with this, he's donating his $4.5 million paycheck to charity, which is a great gesture.
Why not? Why not? I mean, seriously, it's probably his way of also giving something back to the sport. He's actually going over there. Well, I think what he made a comment was that his family will still live in England. And basically, he will sort of commute to training and do all the other and games and whatever. And the fact that this gave him the opportunity for his kids still to go to school where they're currently going to school. So, it's probably just a bit of fun for him. He did make a good comment about the fact that he wasn't just going there to play football, but he was also wants to build that club up. So, time will tell, but I think it's just, go out and have some fun. He did another interesting point he made was the fact that he didn't want to go back to the Premier League and play against Manchester United. So, he's got a bit of credibility there, I think.
He certainly does, Dave Beckham, and I thought it bothered me a bit when I saw the media reports that David Beckham to snub A-League as if he was really ever coming in the first place and as if it was some big drama. I thought that was pretty ridiculous, some of those headlines.
Do you think a little bit of it might have a bit to do with his wife staying in France as against coming down to Australia?
Of course, him and the family, I think, of course, all that comes into play. He doesn't need to come to Australia. He probably doesn't particularly want to unless he
live in Paris.
Find a reason. What was that, Darren?
It's fashion time. Yeah. That's what it's all about.
Well, we'll leave Dave Beckham there. We move to the A-League, a bit closer to home, and the Adelaide side during the week, they lost their coach, John Cosmedes, walked out on the club. He cited a lack of trust in management and all the rest of it. You don't often see a side right near the top of the ladder. They've been second mostly. They've dropped down to fourth after last weekend's loss. But a side right in contention for the title, the coach walking out in the back end of the year. It was a very, very strange thing, and the club in a bit of damage control earlier in the week. Yeah,
I think if you read between the lines there, Cosy obviously didn't get his own way on a couple of things and went, well, I'm out of here. If you put it that way, that's probably what. If you look at his history, that's what Cosy is like. That's why he's sort of left clubs before. He came back to Adelaide and he's certainly done his own thing. Had a board of directors who he sort of controlled in a way, and then now obviously someone's come in there and gone, well, let's change a few things, the structure, and he's gone, well, we're going to do that. I'm away. So, it's probably very disrupting for the team, and it'll be interesting to see how they react over the next few weeks. But I think as a club, if you've got a board of directors who's trying to lead the club in a certain way, and the coach doesn't sort of want to continue the same way, or they have different opinions, you're better off parting ways than sort of fighting against each other internally.
The situation I see here, and obviously we probably haven't got the real reasons and why the discussions happen, so you don't know. But I sort of commend Cosmedes for this, because he's obviously stuck by what he believes in and not become a puppet to the crew, if you know what I mean. Obviously, I would say there's been quite a few months of some bad blood there. But at the end of the day, he's not going to just sit there and take it, which I think is great from a coach's perspective, because you just don't go there and go, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. He's gone there and gone, no, this is what I want. If you don't want it, I'm not here. Now, he could have toughed it out to the end of the season and gone, no, I'll be your puppet, I'll play the game. But then again, you don't know what they've actually put on the table. It might be contractual. It could be anything like that. But it just seems so strange in a way that they've parted companies. But like I said, good on him for sticking up for what he believes in. I hope he has.
Absolutely. We haven't got a lot of time left before we've got to go to a break, so we'll take a quick look through the rest of the round. Last night, the Brisbane Roar, a 2-2 draw with the Central Coast Mariners. That was a pretty good performance for them. They were down 1-0 at half-time, got themselves back into the lead, but then let it slip late in the game to finish up with a draw. But the draw does mean that they're inside the top 6 for the first time in a long time. Of course, that can all change later in the round with Sydney and Melbourne still to play. But yeah, they're in there, and like I said at the top of the show, they've shown signs of it. It was Thomas Baroich and Bersap Areshis combined for both goals. When those two are firing, they're a real danger side. And I think if for the Central Coast Mariners, Melbourne Victory, these top sides, they don't want the Brisbane Roar to sneak into 5th or 6th with a little bit of momentum in the back end of the year, because they're going to be dangerous if they can find their way in there. So pretty good, some good signs there for the Roar, but it's still not quite all together for them. Tonight we got the Wellington Phoenix up against the Perth Glory over in New Zealand. Newcastle up against Sydney FC. The Melbourne Victory up against the Melbourne Heart. The Melbourne Derby, always a big one. And then we got Adelaide United up against Western Sydney Wanderers tomorrow. That is a quick wrap of the A-League round. Take a look at the ladder. The Central Coast Mariners on top, Melbourne Victory, Western Sydney Wanderers, Adelaide United, Newcastle Jets, Brisbane Roar. There's the top 6. We got Melbourne Heart, Sydney FC, Perth Glory, and the Wellington Phoenix. That's a quick wrap of the A-League ladder and all the rest of it. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's time to talk some cricket.
Get ready for summer. Call our sponsor Thompson Cooling on 1300 852 869 to have your air conditioner serviced and be assured of clean, efficient and economical air conditioning in your home or office. Thompson Cooling will also design and install a new air conditioning system to suit your requirements. Interest-free finance available. Thompson Cooling, the Dakin air conditioning specialist, serving the Logan community. Phone 1300 852 869.
Do you have a street light that's not functioning correctly outside your property? Perhaps you've noticed a floodlight over a zebra crossing that's not operating. Well, Energex would like you to report it to them by calling 13 12 53 or completing an online form for faulty streetlights on their website at energex.com.au. Remember also that the council has to pay the running cost of all the streetlights, whether they're working or not. So let's get the most for our rateable dollar by reporting the streetlights not functioning to Energex on 13 12 53 or on their website energex.com.au.
Having a party or barbecue at your house this Saturday night? Make sure you tune in to Saturday Night Party Mix from 7 p.m. on your station 101 FM.
Now it's back to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Yes, welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It is 12 minutes to 9. If next fresh news update coming up at 9 o'clock. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you. And we got a text from Andy, faithful Andy, coming on every week on the show. We love the feedback, Andy. Keep them coming. Says, how about the doubles tennis, the people's game? There's some good stories there too. And he's 100% right. Australia in particular did very, very well in the doubles this year, of course, with the mixed doubles as well. Darren, they sort of...
women's doubles.
The
Don't
women's
forget
doubles,
the women's
yes,
doubles.
that's what I meant. Yes, the Australian people... Well, the Australian players really put the doubles into the spotlight this year, which we haven't seen for a couple of years, which was good to see, wasn't it, Darren?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been a fairly good reason why we haven't had any doubles for a while. It's because our key doubles player has become a key singles player in Sam Stosur. You know, her and Lisa Raymond were the number one ranked doubles pair in the world for a number of years. And all of a sudden, Sam came back from illness, a completely different player. And next thing you know, she's ranked in the top 3 or 4 in the world at the time. So that's one of the reasons why, you know, we just didn't have anybody doing the business.
That's true, but it was good to see the guys come through in this Australian Open and show it on the map. Just quickly before we move on to the cricket, mate, you wanted to talk about the Davis Cup very quickly.
Yes, Davis Cup. We are 2 rubbers to love up in the Davis Cup tie against Chinese Taipei, Taiwan or Republic of China, whichever way your politics goes. Also, as well, that's the winner of that goes through the next round in April. And in April, if we win that, we go through to the playoffs in the World Group. And at the moment, too, around the World Group, the main ones there to be worried about, Brazil are 1-love up against Brazil at the moment. France are 2-love up against Israel. How the hell did Israel get into the World Group? But anyway, they're there. Kazakhstan 2-love up against Austria. Switzerland and the Czech Republic are 1 each. And Serbia 2-love up, and Djokovic is playing in that tie as well against Belgium, 2-love up against them. So that's just a quick roundup of Davis Cup this weekend. So the boys aren't playing any tournaments this weekend. They're all on Davis Cup duty.
All right, time to move on to the cricket now. And yesterday, the big result, Australia bowled the West Indies out for 70. All out for 70, can you believe that? And then we chased it down, 1 for 71. Glenn Maxwell, unbelievable with the bat, 51 from 35. He just went out there, hit 18 off the first over, just bang, bang, bang. It was great to watch. It was nice, out and quick and over. 9.2 overs it took the Aussies to get to that total. It was a pretty ridiculous game of cricket. Mitchell Starc was the destroyer with the ball, 5 for 20, where his figures... there's not a lot you can say about this because not a lot happened, guys, but, what are some general thoughts we had coming out of it?
I want to question something here.
Please do.
Right, okay. And
it's what we're about here.
I fill a soapbox.
It's only going to be really quick. The thing is, we had this debacle the other week with the rain, okay? There's disgruntled people and all this sort of stuff that didn't see... I think they got 40 over... No, they got about 20 overs in. Not much.
Yeah, 30 overs
right?
in, 40 overs.
I have not heard one word about any disgruntled people from the public coming in and only watching 30 over in a 100 over match.
Right.
Now, is it because Australia won or they didn't get their money? What is going on there that there is not one thing said about this?
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah,
Australia won.
Yeah.
Simple.
Just did Australia win, they did it in such an entertaining fashion, like 5 for 20 for Mitchell Starc, this big 50 there from Maxwell, he was smacking sixes.
It was a 3-hour game that was supposed to go for 8.
Yeah.
So I feel sorry for the sponsors. I feel sorry for the corporates.
Yep.
Spend all this money. I mean, I had people, say to me last night, I came home to watch the cricket.
Yep.
Cricket was finished 4 hours ago, buddy.
Yeah.
So yes, while it was entertaining, no one seen it.
Right. Well,
that's the key.
I myself yesterday, I went to the beach and they were about 2 down. I came back and they were like 8 down. West Indies, well, what happened? I was only gone for 45 minutes. So.
Uni students to the beach,
graduated now, actually, but we'll leave that.
No, but can you see my point? Can you see my point in that?
Point.
And I thought to myself, the first time they did it in Sydney, they were just looking after the betterment of the players.
Yes.
That's fine, well and good, and everyone was disgruntled. And I think there was the game in Brisbane. Same sort of situation that was over really quickly, but people walking out saying this, that and the other thing. Look, all good, and I'll just leave it there, and I just think to myself, hang on, you've got to take it both ways, not just take it, as we have a win. So that's all I had to say about that.
I still think if it's under 30 overs in a 100 over game or something like that, hey, get 12 people out of the crowd, have six on one side, 6 on the other, get some of the reserve players of Australia and West Indies, go out there and have a hit and giggle.
A quick 20.
A quick 5 overs or 10 overs or something on the whacker. And how meant those people would remember that day for years to come.
Hang on.
Hold on, Darren. I know where you're going. Let me stop you right there. We're not suggesting the players that were just out there go out there. What Lee is saying is to bring out, other form of entertainment, not the players that are already out there because you're just going to injure them or something like that. It's not worth the risk. That's the point we're making before you jump on your high horse there for us, shooting down your point last week, Darren. Yes. I know that's exactly where that was going. I'll leave yesterday's game. I'll leave yesterday's game there because there's not a lot else to say about it. We smashed them. There'll be another one on Monday, Sunday.
Mitchell Starc, 4 for 1
on
one stage. Only person to ever go better than that. Some bloke called Ambrose, Kirtley, first name, last name Ambrose. 7 for 1 against Australia.
That's a good start.
That's
a good start. I think it's a good point.
Yeah, but the fact is
that match, wasn't it?
Hey, you're older than me. You should know. Great effort.
And beautiful.
Yeah, that was superb. Maxwell, was that a bit of a revenge from a few nights ago to say that, hey, I can do this. I want to finish this job.
Probably was. And to the next point that we're going to talk about is the squad named for India. Some people were questioning the selection of him and some of the other all-rounders in the squad, but he really proved that he is worthy. He has got the talent to be there with that display. We'll take a look at that team now. The squad is Michael Clark and Shane Watson are the captain and vice-captain, respectively. Then we got Jackson Bird, Ed Cowan, Xavier Doherty, Moses Enriques, Phil Hughes, Mitchell Johnson, Usman Khawaja, Nathan Lyon, Glenn Maxwell, James Pattinson, Peter Siddle, Steve Smith, Mitchell Stark, Matthew Wade and David Warner. A solid squad there they've got going. The things people have been questioning about it, though, there's only 6 specialty batsmen. There's only 1 keeper. And there's 3 all-rounders in that squad. So the balance of the squad is a little different to what we're used to seeing for a touring side. We'll start with the keeper, only taking the 1 keeper. What do we make of that? Would we have been better suited to take Brad Haddon as well as a backup keeper, or are we good enough with just the 1?
How long's the flight?
To India?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's a while.
Surely you can only take a day to get over there.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Look, I think the situation is, I believe, and this is only my personal opinion, that Haddon's probably a better keeper at the moment. So it all depends what you want. I think we're looking for more batting. But mind you, Haddon can still bat. But I think what actually happened in that situation, Hughes proved himself valuable behind the stumps and could probably fill that role. And we spoke about that in a previous show. So I think a lot of people looked at that and gone, well, hang on, it's not that hard a job. Phil Hughes can do it, and he did it well. So I think they've covered their base there a little bit. And as Lee said, it only takes if there's an injury,
fly him out.
Yeah, you can fly him.
How many times have we seen that happen in all sorts of tours where somebody gets hurt? It doesn't have to come from the 6 guys sitting on the bench. So I think probably a bit of drama made over that over nothing.
I believe so. I mean, they're the guys who are going to live and breathe it for 3 or 4 weeks or whatever they're 6 weeks, whatever they're over there.
Yeah.
But there's nothing stopping another contracted player getting flown in because of injury. Simple.
The other thing you said, Kev, you had 3 all-rounders.
Yep.
Now, they are genuine all-rounders, and they would be?
Maxwell, Steve Smith, and Enriques.
Okay, you got Watson?
Yeah, Watson's there as well.
But he's not going to bowl.
Yep.
Okay. In that situation,
Let's see where we're going.
Can you see Stark?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see
Mitchell
Wade
Johnson.
and Mitchell Johnson? I counted 7, because you've got to remember, because he's a keeper doesn't mean he's an all-rounder. He's a keeper, and he can bowl.
Yep.
He can bowl, too. And he's a batsman. So you've got to put him in the alignment of an all-rounder. So I reckon you're going there with 7 all-rounders. Now, if that's the case, are we really focusing too much on not getting absolutely genuine batsmen, genuine bowlers, and then going down to your all-rounder situation when you only got the genuine ones?
It's a really interesting question because the tail is quite long in that order. Like even down to Siddle and Nathan Lyon, they can still bat. We've seen Nathan Lyon do a good job as night watchman before on a few occasions. So you're 100% right. Like there is a long tail there, but I think the question mark still remains the top order.
Yeah,
that's where the weakness has been. Shane Watson coming back will hopefully add to that, and with him not bowling as well, hopefully he's due to really hit form soon. Shane Watson, he needs to. He'll probably bat.
He's due or needs to.
Well, he needs to. It's both. It's the same thing, really.
His mindset will be in a bad space because he's so focused about getting his injury right that he can't concentrate on batting, and then he's got to concentrate on bowling. What he's done is 100% right, or what the Australian cricket have done is gone, no, let's lay off the bowling. We need batsmen. And they've probably seen exactly what you've said, Kev, is that there is a bit of a deficiency in our batting. We need some experienced batsmen coming in. So concentrate on that. Give the bowling a flick. We've got enough all-rounders in the side to cover that. If you can stand up as a batsman, then he gets over his injury because he's not putting that undue pressure on his calf.
Yeah.
Then he goes in and he just bats. All of a sudden, he gets his confidence high. He gets back to batting the way. Then it starts to stabilise our batting structure. So it's probably the best way to go if you can get fit.
Just quickly, we've got about 45 seconds before we've got to go to the news, but just get an opinion on who we would have in our top 6 there. I think the top 5 are pretty set. It would be Warner, Cowan, Hughes, Watson, Clark. Batting at 6, would we want Khawaja or would we want an all-rounder there?
I think you've got, for long term, I think you've got to go Khawaja because if things do go belly up at the top of the list, injury, whatever the case, you can't put an all-rounder up there.
Yeah.
I think an all-rounder comes in to do their job.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Khawaja's the guy, and they can groom him to be an important top-order batsman too if he needs to be in the future. And then the bowlers, I think it'll probably be Pattinson, Siddle, the top 2 quicks, and then Stark and Johnson are pretty interchangeable in the way they play. They're both similar roles. But we've got to leave it there. Warnie, sorry, ran out of time for your manifesto, unfortunately. unfortunately, which I'm happy about, to be honest with you, because it's been driving me crazy all week. But stay with us. We'll be back after the news on 101 FM.
Your station, 101 FM, with Saturday Sports Scene.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It is 5 minutes past 9. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you, taking you through all the big issues in sport for the week. And I joked about it before we went to the news that, sorry, Warnie, we ran out of time, but we'll talk about it very briefly because I think we probably should say something about it. We had a pretty interesting discussion off air about it, so we'll go into it. Warnie pretty much handed down his report on what he thinks should happen in Cricket Australia and how to fix all the problems. Basically, what he said was sack everybody except Michael Clark, everybody in position of power, and bring in Tubby Taylor to be the CEO.
Rod Marsh, I think, was one as a selector.
Yeah. But a bunch of things like that. Basically, what we were saying off air, it's amazing. Everyone's always put up with Warnie's antics and all the rest of it and embraced it. It seems like we always thought no one will turn on Warnie. He's done a really good job of getting people to just turn on him and really get sick of hearing him speak about stuff this season.
Yeah, Warnie was just, an elite cricketer. There was no ifs or buts about it. You never,
Can't catch, can't bowl.
But there was reasons probably he wasn't captain of the Australian side at times. He was obviously very, very knowledgeable, knows what's going on about the place, but there's reasons why he wasn't captain. That doesn't give him a licence now to turn around and just have his opinion on what he thinks should happen. And, if it was Greg Blewett, hypothetically, someone who was a great cricketer, probably never made Test level. If he was to say it, all of a sudden there would be, and I'm only using Greg Blewett as an example, sure. But the thing is, someone who is not as profiled as he, if they had said it, God, there would be hell to burn.
No, absolutely. I mean, we spoke off air the fact that these guys can go out and can catch, can bowl, can hit some runs, and then think they don't know how to run the sport and know what goes on behind the scenes. It's there's only a handful of people who can turn in from. I won't say handful, but there's a limited amount of people who can turn from elite athlete into running the sport and having a business mind about them.
Yes.
And I don't think Warnie has had enough to do with actually running the sport as a whole. Yes, he's been able to run teams. He's been able to, done very good in his business life and, managing his own affairs. But as a people's person and actually knowing what needs to happen for the overall scheme of things, well, he's got his opinion and he's aired him. That's about all I'm going to say on that one.
What about you, Darren?
Yeah, I'm just actually taking a look at some of it now. Rod Marsh, I actually agree with. Rod Marsh has proven himself over a course of decades now as be a very, very good administrator. He was the guy who actually ran the academy for the most of its existence and gave us a lot of the players that went on to be greats of the game over the past 20 years. Warnie shooting his mouth off's probably not the best way to do it, but he's thrown a couple of names in there that are very good. Stephen Fleming, I've always had the highest regard for, and I think he will end up becoming a very good administrator. But yeah,
they wanted him to be coach, didn't they? Australian coach, Stephen Fleming. They wanted him to be the Australian coach, didn't they?
The thing with Fleming is he's got his commentary commitments, and Mark Taylor's the same thing. There's no use throwing them out. If they're happy doing the commentary, they're not going to want to take up a high pressure job that they have to go on the road and travel all the time.
But I would be making sure Rod Marsh has never lost to Australian cricket again, because he spent some time in England, if memory serves, after he finished up as the academy administrator. So, I would not want to see Rod Marsh lost to Australian cricket again in any way, shape or form. He's too good at what he does.
Fair enough. We'll leave the Warnie discussion there, I think, for now. Yeah, the debacle, well put. We're going to move on to another debacle that's happened in the AFL this week. The drugs system has come into question again after a group of Collingwood players, understood to be at least 4 of them, self-reported drug use to the AFL, which means they avoid getting a strike, and the infamous 3-strike policy. So basically what the rule was is if you report it yourself, you're okay, it's not a strike and you can do it. That loophole, they had a drug summit through the week, they've closed that loophole now, but they have all agreed to keep the 3 strikes policy in place. That was a unanimous decision. How do we read into all this? First of all, I think it's a no-brainer. It was the right call to close that one off, the self-reporting thing.
I can't believe it was there to start with.
No.
Can I?
It's crazy, isn't it?
I'm impressed by the smarts of the players to actually work it out that there is a loophole in there. So I'm not sure if someone's told them or they've worked it out themselves, but that's impressive. They've found the loophole. I'm glad to see it gone. There is no place in sport at that level or any level for drugs, and if they're on drugs, get them out. Simple. No excuse. You're an ambassador. You're a leader. You are an elite athlete. You should act like one.
Well, that leads to the next question then with the 3 strikes policy. It's something that people have debated for a long time. Is that too lenient, the 3-strike policy?
I don't think so. I feel that yes, there are a lot of pressure on these guys, and if they do make some wrong decisions, I don't, as you can probably tell, don't agree at all with drug taking or anything along those lines. But the fact of the matter is, if they are there, this gives them the opportunity to wake up to themselves. It doesn't ruin their life, because that's what it could do. One mistake could really ruin their life.
Yeah.
Yes, people are going to make mistakes, but no, that's not too lenient. It's still harsh enough that you get 2 warnings and the third one you're gone.
Right.
It's quite simple. You don't get any more over that. You give them enough cracks.
It sounds to me like, sorry, Darren, and I'll just do this quickly. It sounds to me like the first 2 strikes are a slap on the hand. I don't think there's enough. There should be a rating, not a rating system, but your penalties increase when you're caught. So you do find, like, if I was playing footy, nothing to do with drugs, but if I was playing footy and I made a mistake, I would have to do penalties, and if I do it again, I'd do more penalties. Like, at the end of it, there's only one way to learn, is to either, and I don't believe these guys, by taking money out of their pocket, is going to hurt them. It doesn't seem to hurt them, because they're making that much.
Sure.
What I'm saying is that there's got to be, and, going to counselling and going to is not the thing. What I'm saying is there should be a ban. Like, you look at what Kirk Tippett, to my knowledge, is not on drugs, but he's copped a very healthy ban for just making a mistake.
Right.
But he copped the ban.
Sure.
This is something that is wrong. This is totally wrong, regardless of first, second, or third time.
Yep.
And you've got to remember, it happens a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And there is no penalties first 2. That's how it seems to me. So they've got to increase. With the, obviously, after 3, you are gone. There is no more football for you, Sunshine.
So you're saying perhaps, say, on the first positive test, give them 6 weeks, second positive test, give them 12 weeks, and third one, they're gone, something like that.
I agree, in a way, I agree with it, because that hurts them more, the fact they're not playing.
They're still losing money. They're still losing money, but they're losing what they love to do.
But I tend to disagree there with the counselling and the support thing. That's got to be there. Yeah. There's no question about that. That has got to be there, because that's their obligation as an association.
Before I throw to you, Darren, I think that's a very good point, Lee Mason. I think the focus can't just be about punishing the player. It's also got to be about rehabilitation. Yeah. And drugs is such a serious thing, and it's not always simply just stop doing it right here. They might, the problems with it. And you can turn someone around and make a mistake once or twice with it. You got to have the opportunity there to turn them around. So, Darren, we'll throw to you before we go to the break.
I think we've got to split the drugs into 2 areas, one illicit and one your normal prescription drugs. Illicit drugs, they're illegal for the rest of us, so they're illegal for the players as well. They should be treated as such, handed over to the cops, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if you and I were caught using these sort of drugs, we would be sitting before a magistrate somewhere. Right? Same thing should go for the players. That just because they're footballers doesn't make them different to you or I when it comes to illicit drugs. As far as prescription drugs are concerned, things like diuretics and stuff like that, which can be used to mask other drugs, sometimes they're actually necessary, but that should be done in conjunction with your doctor. And as long as your doctor and yourself are open with the AFL on this thing, and it's all out in the open, there's no reason why you can't do that and do it out in the open. There are certain drugs which you're required to take, like prednisone, furosemide, and things like that, which are diuretics and steroids, which are actually used for certain conditions. And they're actually banned as well because they can mask other drugs. Well, if you use them in conjunction with a doctor and it's all out in the open, then you can get away with it. But I don't see any reason why anybody should get away with anything. I mean, if it's in conjunction with a doctor, it's out in the open. If you haven't done it in conjunction with a doctor, you've taken it off your own bat and you've done it illegally, tough luck. You're gone.
Yeah, good point.
Fair enough. I think we'll leave it there. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll go through the GWS Giants, the Gold Coast Suns and the Melbourne Demons in our AFL 2013 preview.
Animal management laws are now unified across all of the Logan City area. Desexing of all cats is now mandatory unless you are a registered breeder. Amongst other amendments, the law has changed regarding the number of dogs and cats that can be kept on your property. For further information about the changes and about all animal laws, contact Logan City Council on 3412 3412 or check Council's website www.logan.qld.gov.au.
Every eye is an eye. When you're doing the surgery there, that is just as important as if you were doing eye surgery on the Prime Minister or the King.
Hi, I'm Gabby Hollows. That was my late husband, Fred Hollows. He helped restore sight to people with cataract blindness. Each month, the Fred Hollows Foundation needs to perform 12,000 operations so that blind people can see again. You can help restore sight for just $25. Call 1-800-352-352 or donate at hollows.org.au.
101 FM.
You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on the voice of Logan City, 101 FM.
Yes, welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's 16 minutes past 9, rather. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you. We're going to go now and start our AFL season 2013 preview. It's only a few weeks away now and it will be everything firing on all cylinders. We're going to go same as the NRL, we'll go from the bottom up and work our way through every team in the competition and what we think is going to happen with them this year. We start with last year's Wooden Spooners, the GWS Giants, who in their first year, of course, finished last, as I just said. But I think in a lot of people's minds were rather impressive, all things considered. Would you say that's a fair comment, Craig?
I think they were, and the reason I think they were is probably not by the wins they've had and how competitive they were, is their structure they put in place, it seemed to be totally different to the Suns. The Suns went and got a heap of kids, and they just got them there and said, right, we're going to be a power in 5-6 years. What the GWS tried to do is they brought back some older players that were retired, to give the young kids guidance, but also got some players that were 3 or 4 year players that have got a bit of a background and will build quicker. And they just, across the board, seem to be in a position where they just didn't leave it all up to the kids, because at times it can bruise the kids. It can really make it hard because they can go down a path that, geez, I'm not comfortable with this. Whereas the GWS loaded up with the Lukey Powers, the Chad Corns and these sort of players to make them a stronger group and stayed involved with the club. And it's also good to see, they done it also with the coach, getting Kevin Sheedy in there, and they had the heir apparent. Well, I thought it was going to be Mark Williams, so obviously it's not, but they've gone on from there.
It's come over to us, mate.
Do you think they learnt from the Suns?
Oh, yeah, look, their profile or whatever they had was great to learn off, because you couldn't learn it off any other AFL club because they were established clubs going in certain directions.
About the last one was really Adelaide, starting from nothing. Was Adelaide, and that sort of come from a collaboration of SANFL and other bits and pieces, so it wasn't as if they were starting with absolutely nothing. Yeah,
and look, it was always going to be hard for GWS and the Suns because they're going into non-AFL states, so it was always, and more so probably for the GWS because they were going into a highly, very popular rugby league and actually soccer area. So it was really,
it is now, yeah.
Yeah, but it was a really strong area that wasn't AFL, probably wasn't their first or second chosen sport. So they've had to go in there and make some really hard calls. And, I think a lot of people will see GWS as I think they'll progress quicker because I reckon they've got smart management. And not saying the Gold Coast haven't. I just reckon they've worked it a little bit better and they're grooming a side, not getting kids to build on it.
Okay. We're going to have to move on to the Suns in a moment, guys, but I'll just quickly go through. What sort of improvement do we expect from them? Can we put a number on it, or do we still see them ending up down the bottom again?
Look, they will be down the bottom. Yeah. There's no doubt in the world about that. And it'll take years for this to happen, but they will be strong because what they put in place is going to hold them for many, many years. And I don't think you can put wins. Wins are good for the, obviously, for corporate. They're obviously good for to getting bums on seats. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at the bigger picture, I think just to break down the deficit situation, so if you were getting beaten by 15 goals last year, I think they need to be beaten by 8 goals this year, and being a competitive unit, being on the threshold of actually possibly winning some games.
Yeah, fair enough. All right.
I think they're pretty similar. As long as they go down with a fight this year, they won't be a walkover. They'll be fighters, and they might go down by an average of 6 to 9 goals.
Yeah, either way, it's about building for future. Darren, I'll come to you first with the next team. We're going to move now to the Gold Coast Suns, going into their 3rd year in the AFL. I saw an interesting interview last night on Fox Sports News with Carmichael Hunt. He's shed more kilos over the off-season, and it looks like he's going to play an even bigger role in the midfield, probably a tagging role. Darren, I know you've been an advocate of the way he has made his switch across codes with Carmichael Hunt there. Can you see him improving even more this year than he did last year? Because I think that given the attitude of the guy and the determination I know he's had ever since he started in NRL at 16, I think he can really keep progressing.
Anthony Mundine, take a look at this man. This is what you call a guy who can switch sports and be an absolute champion.
Yeah.
I mean, the way he's handled himself has been fantastic. I always thought he'd end up being a midfielder simply because of his body type, and it gave him a bit more of a chance to express himself, and he was that sort of a rugby league player anyway. But and did I read something right during the week about, has he been removed from the leadership group?
Yes,
correct.
He
has. They trimmed the whole leadership group.
What was the thinking behind that, Craig? Do you have any idea behind
Look, I wouldn't know. The only reason I would think they would take him off the leadership group, because I think they know his leadership qualities. Yeah. I think they would take it so he can focus more on doing his job. Like, if he is going into a role as a tagger, it's very hard to sort of go out there and sort of play the game and be out there to dictate to other players, where he's got to focus. I think so he can actually sit down and concentrate on his own performance so he can progress.
Yeah. Look, I think from a skill level, he's picked up in every area. I'd still like to see him keep his feet a bit more, but that's something that footballers learn at a very young age. I think he's much better at it than people like Israel and that were when they tried to make the switch. I mean, a lot of those guys, their first instinct is to fall to the ground with the ball.
Well, that's a rugby league background, isn't it?
Yeah. That is the rugby league background, but I think he's getting better at keeping his feet. As far as taking the ball in his hands rather than on the chest, his kicking of the drop punt, which we all know he can kick over 50 metres, is great. And I just think he's going to be he's going to make, if he makes that next stage, that next step up this year, which I think he can, we're going to be singing the guy's praises by about mid-year in a big, big way.
Where are they going to finish?
Sorry?
Where are they going to finish?
I still think they'll be outside of the 8, but I think they're capable of finishing 10th or 11th.
You know, one good thing about Carmichael Hunt, the only thing I'll say about it, years gone past, you probably wouldn't think, if he was to be delisted by the Suns, would anyone pick him up? I'd say would have said no. I reckon now he's the sort of bloke that a lot of clubs would be generally interested in.
Yeah, I think that's a very good compliment to pay Carmichael Hunt. Just how far he's come with it, the rest of it. I think that's a fair call. Before we move away from the Suns, guys, I know there's always a lot of influx of young players, all the rest of it. Are there some guys in the Suns, perhaps from the local system, Craig, that have moved into the, perhaps on the fringes of the main roster that we could keep an eye on this year? Anything like that?
Well, there's obviously the one, the first person who I probably think of is a bloke like Rory Thompson. Now, I've got a fairly good association with him and the family. And the thing is, he last year had unbelievable amount of injuries, and it probably slowed him down dramatically. These guys who are kids, all of a sudden their bodies probably working too hard for their growth rate, if that makes sense. It's really, they're not growing into their bodies, they're being pushed into it. Hence, I reckon a lot of injuries are coming from this. I think you'll find when they can actually get used to the threshold of the pain, getting used to the injury,
week in, week out stuff.
I reckon you'll see blokes like Rory Thompson, who he played on key defenders last year, key attackers last year. I think he will be valuable to the group. That's just one, and I think there is a few in that mould. So it's a case of just seeing the players they've got, the young players they've got, and see if they can tolerate their pain and their injuries and their rehabilitation and what they've done and flourish from there. And actually, as we spoke about beforehand, about players actually just growing and being better footballers in just their normal growth rate, if that makes sense.
Craig, it looks like they might have been a bit quiet on the draft front too. They picked up 4 in the national draft.
Yeah.
Jesse Lonergan, Tim Sumner, Kyle Horsley and Clay Cameron, and just 2 players in the rookie draft in Lee Osborne and Andrew Boston.
Yeah. Look, they as we spoke about before with GWS, it's the same situation there. Like I would have, if I was the Suns this year or even next year, I'd be really looking to get some really boutique players into their group. I know Kurt Tippett wasn't in their structure from what I believe. So they need to start getting really solid players around with these kids that are developing, and that's when you'll see them. They'll grow from that. At the moment, if you leave it all up to the kids and let them naturally develop, yes, they'll be good in the future, but I just reckon they need some guidance, and, you know, obviously you can see what Gary Ablett's done to them.
Just one last thing on the front end. Would you like to see Gary Ablett move permanently up to, say, full forward?
No.
No.
Look, you can rest him there. I reckon he's a person. I know rotations are very significant in AFL, but he's a sort of person you could limit the rotations and push him forward for mismatches and so on, because, as you know, his dad was a great forward. Yep. And his dad was also a midfielder when he first started. So at the end of the day, I think you'll find, less time off the ground and more time probably forward.
How old is Ablett now? How many years do you reckon he's got left in him?
I think he's 25, 6.
Is that all?
He's still quite young.
Wow.
I think he'll end up there at the end of his career like his dad did. But
I think he'd be more along the Lee Matthews type, more so than his father playing a key role. You know, that small forward who can kick goals and Matera type situation. So, but at the end of the day, I just, we've heard about him saying he's going to go back to Geelong if he doesn't get his premiership by the end of his contract. Well, if that happens, but you can't control that.
No, you can't control that. What is important with Gary Ablett is that he's going, wherever he plays, he's going to be the central figure of the Gold Coast Suns moving forward, and they need him there. We'll leave the Gold Coast Suns there at 27 minutes past 9. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you, going through our 2013 AFL season preview. Now we're going to talk about the Melbourne Demons, who had a pretty ugly start to the year last year. I think that's fair to say. Can we see them improving any this year?
Well, and Darren, they've recruited quite well in their mature age list. They've got one that comes to mind without really thinking about it, is Shannon Byrne, who couldn't get a game on a regular basis at Geelong, but I think he's a premiership player with them. He's gone to them, and I think he will be significant to them. And I think they've got a few other players along the line that have actually gone from other clubs that were struggling. So in that regard, I think it's quite smart what they've done. Obviously, they got rid of Ricky Pettard, and he's gone to Richmond now. But, that was just an injury-induced sort of situation where he just couldn't get his body right, and hopefully he'll be all right over in Richmond. But I think they've really recruited smartly. Whether they're going to improve, I don't know. Sorry?
So they've picked up a lot in the draft.
Yeah, they have, and they're mature. They're established footballers, and I think that's really important. And they've got their share of genuine young recruits that are still going to go forward and still going to be valuable to the club in years to come. But I think for the short-term fix and to be competitive for the corporate dollar and also the getting supporters involved, I think it's really important what they've done to get some of the the matured recruits.
Yeah, I agree, and as you know, I've always been a big advocate of the Melbourne Football Club. I think football needs Melbourne.
Yeah, for sure.
Just as Formula One needs Ferrari and all that sort of stuff. They transcend the sport because they are the oldest competitive football team in a major competition anywhere in the world, and that includes all the soccer competitions around the world, the whole lot. So it would just be an awful shame. They've weathered the storm financially as a football club over the past decade and a half on a number of occasions. I just hope they can continue to do that. And really, I think football needs Melbourne to be back up around that mid-pack again.
Yeah. Very briefly, guys, before we go to the break, just finally, can we see Melbourne moving up the ladder, or are we going to be accusing them of tanking again this time next year?
Well, I don't think they'll ever tank again. They're getting reviewed through that at the moment. Look, I think they will, and I hope they pick up the legacy of Jim Steins for what he's done to the club. And it would have been a very emotional year from last year to go through what they went through. So hopefully, if things are put on the right path, look, they're not going to figure in the 8. But just, once again, the GWS scenario, if they can break the margin down, be more competitive and make the competition a better competition to watch, I think that's valuable for the club.
I think quickly, behind Richmond, Melbourne are the second most frustrating team in the competition.
Yeah.
You see them play glimpses of 10 minutes here or 20 minutes here, but putting 4 quarters together is their key. And as I said, Richmond are the most frustrating team in the competition to watch, no question whatsoever. Melbourne second. I reckon they'll around that, between 10th and 14th they will end up.
Fair enough. We've got to leave it there and go to the break. When we come back from the break, we'll talk NRL. We're talking the Roosters, the Knights and the Titans today. And we're going to get Ethan James from the QRL on the phone with us to help us chat all things rugby league. So stay with us.
Bushfire season is here. Is your home in the line of fire? Bushfire not only threatens rural communities, if you live in a suburban or semi-rural area, you could also be at risk. Prepare yourself for the fire season. Clear the yard, get rid of leaves and twigs from the gutters, and know what to do if fire threatens your home. Remember, this year it could be you in the line of fire. For advice, contact your local fire station. This is a safety message from Queensland Fire and Rescue.
Australia has 37,000 kilometres of coastline. The Customs hotline number is 1800 06 1800. What have they got in common? Well, patrolling a coastline that big is a huge task. We have to stop people trying to bring drugs in or smuggle wildlife out. You know your local area best, so if you see or hear anything that looks suspicious, call the Customs hotline on 1800 06 1800 and help protect Australia's borders.
Tune into Alvin Contemporary 11th of February, 7pm till 10pm for a special feature on the British invasion. Those bands and artists that changed the world, and not just in music, from 1963 to 1969 and beyond. The so-called invasion was a catalyst for extraordinary movement across the globe in attitudes, fashion, politics, and so much more. This is a 3-hour presentation of the songs that brought about the New World Order in contemporary music in your city, your station, 101 FM.
Hi, I'm Nikki Buckley with a tip on how you can support Coast Care. Now, when boating, use biodegradable oil in your 2-stroke engine whenever possible and always anchor securely in a sandy space. The reefs and seagrass beds can be damaged when anchors are allowed to shift. For more coastline information, call 1800 603 772.
The Leukemia Foundation's World's Greatest Shave starts March 14. It's a fun way to support people with blood cancer, and taking part is easy. All you have to do is pledge to shave or colour your hair. Then round up as many donations as you can from friends, family, colleagues, even your hairdresser. Your new look might not change your life, but the money you raise will change someone else's. So be brave and shave. Sign up now at worldsgreatestshave.com.
Your city, your station, 101 FM.
Now it's back to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Yes, welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's 33 minutes past 9. Your next fresh news update coming up at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you. And now joining us on the line from down in Melbourne, from the QRL, freelance writer for the QRL there, Mr. Ethan James. Ethan, welcome to Sports Scene.
No, thanks very much for having me, guys.
No worries, mate. It's a pleasure to have you here. You're down in Melbourne at the moment covering the Melbourne Storm versus the East Tigers QRL trial game down there. Tell us a little bit how that's shaping up. There's some big names playing and a bit of a crowd expected.
Yeah, so a few big names in the Melbourne Storm squad. They selected a squad of 22, and that's 17 from their top NRL squad with about 5 or so under 20s thrown in as well. And they've picked a fair few guys with a bit of NRL experience. They've picked Matt Duffy, Brett Finch, and, of course, a few new signings, Junior Sal, Setu, who's returned from a Mullen mission recently, and Bave and Sisa Wanga as well. So it should be a good match, and that one's on tonight down here, so looking forward to it.
Whereabouts is that being played, mate?
Gosh's Paddock, which is just on the outside of Amy Park down here. So yeah, it should be good. They're expecting a crowd of a few thousand as well, so it should be interesting.
That'll be great. What about for the East Tigers perspective? Well, what's it like? I know there's the partnership there between the Storm and the East Tigers. Is this a matter of the Storm flying the East Tigers down for the thing? And how much of a benefit do you think it is for the East Tigers to get to play against these guys?
That's a pretty good hit out for sure. I mean, not many intra Super Cup clubs get the chance to have a hit out against members of an NRL squad or an NRL team. So I know all the lads at East are looking forward to the challenge. It is, of course, the first game for both teams, so they could be a bit rusty, but it'll be a good hit out, and there's a few new blokes at East as well, and they'll be looking to put their best foot forward as well.
Ethan, it's Craig Crowley here, mate, and mate, I'm originally a Victorian. I love my Aussie rules, but I've adopted rugby league and I love it up here.
Yep.
You've got this game. It's a trial game, and you're going to get a lot of Victorians go and say, "Hey, well, let's go and have a look at this." The quality of the game, and we understand how practice matches work in all the codes, and you're not at your best, and we understand that. If the standard's not up to scratch, as probably would be expected, seeing the Storm play, is that going to hurt any of the people that you might be trying to get over from, trying to convert from the Victorians or the AFL structure into the NRL structure?
Potentially. Of course, this is just the very first trial of the season. It's just being played on essentially the training field outside Amy Park.
Yep.
I know the Storm haven't overly promoted it. They are expecting, of course, a crowd of 2,000 or 3,000, I think, is what they're sort of saying.
Yep.
I'm guessing the majority of those will be the die-hard rugby league fans anyway.
Yeah.
And, of course, the Storm are taking a trial on the road to Geelong in the next few weeks. So I think it'll be a sort of chance to really promote the game and perhaps get a few sort of fans outside the rugby league sort of die-hard status kind of thing to sort of perhaps convert some then and get a few more fans on board for that one.
Yep. While we're on the Melbourne Storm, Ethan, Cooper Cronk has pulled out of the All-Star games this week. That follows Billy Slater pulled out of the All-Stars game the week before that. Sean Johnson comes in to replace him. Again, it's all speculation, but they got the World Club Challenge coming up in a couple of weeks. It appears to be that they're pulling their main dudes, don't want to risk them in that game if they've got a niggling injury or whatever, and it seems they want them on deck for that World Club Challenge. I guess it sort of ties into the point of pulling more non-rugby league people. If they can come back, win the premiership last year and then win the World Club Challenge, it seems to be that's what they're putting their importance on, doesn't it? I don't know. It's all speculation, but it seems to be the case. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a fair sort of way of looking at it. And from the Storm's perspective, they'd rather have their big players on board for the World Cup Challenge, and then to make sure that they're fit and fine for the start of the season. The All-Stars match, well, it's a good concept, and it always draws a crowd and plenty of interest. It is just an exhibition game, and from the club's perspective, I can understand their reasoning behind sort of perhaps putting their big names in a bit of cotton wool heading into bigger matches.
Yep. Yeah, Ethan. Just on that, once again, talking about a Victorian situation, Victoria, the AFL always used to have us try to follow the rugby league and had its state of origin concept down there, which really wasn't followed well by the players and the clubs, basically because they wanted to go out and look after their own club base. For the last couple of years, it's been really well supported, the All-Stars game. Do you start to find now that because it's probably a novelty of playing in the game and it's a promotional situation. Now that's sort of subsided a little bit. Are people start now looking about, being the breadwinner and making sure they're looking after the club that's paying their wages?
I think that's a fair assessment again. And I think it comes down to the timing of the match as well.
Yep.
I mean, it's played, before the trial matches essentially, or in the early few weeks of trials. So a lot of the players don't have much game time under their belt at all.
Yep.
So I think that's maybe something to look at moving ahead. Perhaps the timing of the game, maybe playing it somewhere towards the middle of the year, and having players from outside say state of origin and playing around state of origin time or something like that. I'm not really sure, but I think for the timing is the main sort of issue with clubs not wanting to put their players through sort of too much too early in the season.
Fair enough. Well, we've got the All-Star game next weekend on the 9th of February. We'll talk all about it then and preview it properly when we get a chance next week. But now we've got to move on. time quickly scooting away from us. We move on to the three teams we want to preview this week. We've got to start with the Sydney Roosters. They got a new coach in Trent Robinson this year, taking over from Brian Smith, who was sacked at the end of last year. Some big signings for them is probably the big news with the Roosters coming in. James Maloney from the Warriors comes in. Of course, Sonny Bill Williams, the big one as well. And Michael Jennings from the Panthers just in recent weeks. Ethan, I'm really looking forward to see how Sonny Bill goes. Before he left rugby league, he was one of my favourite players, to be completely honest. And, say what you want about what's happened to him since. I really loved watching him play rugby league. I'm excited to see him back. Can you see him playing? He's played in the centres in rugby union. I think he'll probably move back into the back row at the Roosters and have an impact. How do you think Sonny Bill will go this year?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. I'm looking forward to seeing how he goes as well. I think most league fans are, really. I can see him starting in the forwards as well. Of course, he hasn't done the full pre-season. I don't think he's planning on doing the full pre-season with the Roosters. He's got a few boxing endeavours.
Well, you're right. Yeah, he's got a fight next week that he's going to be in. So I don't think he's even arrived for training yet.
No, I think he's too busy partying with Mundine
and Quade Cooper. Yeah.
He might get under the weather for the first 3 rounds, maybe, or something like that.
Perhaps. Well, that's a good point to bring up. I mean, how's he going to adjust with it? Can he hit the ground running? I think he's such a talented player that whatever capacity he takes in the team, he's going to be making an impact.
Yeah. And of course, the other big thing is the shoulder charge is no longer allowed in the NRL.
Which of course he was famous for. Yeah. Well, I think he has the opportunity to make this to make an impact in this side. It's a very young Roosters side. I think Anthony Minicello, who's the captain now, is the only guy over the age of 26, I think I read. So, yeah, a very young side they've got there, some exciting talents. I think there's potential in this side. Can you see them making the 8? I think there's potential to maybe scrape in 7, 8, that sort of position, but a lot of things will have to go right for them.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think James Maloney will bring a lot to them at 5'8" if he plays there outside Mitchell Pearce at halfback. But yeah, I'm sort of inclined to agree with you there. I think there are chances of scraping into the 8, but maybe a year or two away from sort of really reaching that potential.
Darren, you got something to say there? No, I thought I heard him say something. I guess not.
No, very quiet. Is that right?
Good. All right, well, we'll move to the Knights now. I think we leave the Roosters there. The Newcastle Knights. Last year, huge expectations put on with Wayne Bennett rolling into town. It didn't quite work out for them. They got a few injuries. They didn't quite click with Wayne Bennett's style. But he's had a bit of a clean-out, brought in a few new guys. The big signing, of course, Jeremy Smith and Beau Scott, 2 guys that he's coached before and people he's really worked well with in the past. Kurt Gidley missed most of last season as well. The captain should be back on board this year for the most part. I think Newcastle's another team with plenty of room for improvement. If they can get Gidley, Badiris and Darius Boyd all on the field at the same time and start clicking, I think there's some real potential on that side.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I think the signings of Jeremy Smith and Beau Scott are the 2 big ones. Pretty tough, uncompromising forwards, and I think they sort of missed out a bit last year. And then adding Badiris, Boyd and Gidley, they've got a good sort of core of fairly experienced players there. So yeah, I think they will improve. I'm not sure whether they can crack the 8 though.
Yeah, well, I think if we look at the way Wayne Bennett approached the side last year, a lot of the talk with him was that he felt there was a soft underbelly to the club, and you touched on it with Beau Scott and Jeremy Smith. Those guys, they're not soft players. They're tough, hard-working back rowers that, if anything, can really buy into the Wayne Bennett culture. It's really going to be a big boost for them, I think, those 2 signings. They've got some flair outside. Dan Gagai did a great job for them coming from the QRL mid-season last year. He was terrific for them. Even Willie Mason, I think, had a pretty strong year with them last year. So, I think we're in agreement on that one, Ethan. I think the Knights probably... It can be thereabouts around the 8, but it'll still need some things to go right. Probably similar boat to the Roosters. The final team we want to talk about today, the Gold Coast Titans. The big thing with the Gold Coast Titans is this is the first time in the club's history they approach a season without Scott Prince as the face of their club and the leader on the field. How do they bounce back from that? They've signed Albert Kelly is the guy that they brought in. They got Jordan Rankin in reserve grade, who's been playing a bit, still young. Aiden Caesar, a lot of responsibility on him. Ethan, who's the guy who's got to step up and take the place of Scott Prince?
Well, that's a big question, and I think the Titans are looking for the answer as much as anyone else.
Yeah.
As we were saying the other day, John Cartwright, their coach, was saying basically, trial form will go a long way to deciding it. And I think that's probably a fair way of looking at it. I can't answer that one. I'm really not sure, actually. But Rankin's a possibility, as you said. Albert Kelly, has got a fair bit of spark and pace. But I think trial form will go a long way to deciding because Prince is a huge loss, really.
He's a huge loss. It's something we talked about on the show before. Perhaps the Titans have let him go a year or two too early. Particularly, I think Aiden Caesar really impressed last year in his first year in the halves. But to have a young guy in the halves, it's often really helpful to have an old head there next to him. And to push Scott Prince out of the side and leave pretty much Aiden Caesar's going to have to run this side next year. It's a huge responsibility. Do you think it was too soon for the Titans to let go of Scott Prince, or had he run his course?
I'm going to agree with you again there, actually. On the same page pretty regularly. But yeah,
you're going to fit in well with this team if you keep agreeing with me like that. Things are going to go well.
No one agrees with Kev.
It's my first show, so I think I sort of have to. But no, yeah, considering the fact that they don't have any experienced playmakers in the squad, as he did probably go a year or two too early. I do rate the bloke at hooker, Matt Strama. I reckon he's going to turn out to be a sensational player, but I think he's only young himself. He hasn't played over 50 NRL games or anything like that. So, yes, it could be a tough year for the Coast, I think.
I tend to agree. Nate Miles and Greg Bird were named co-captains. Just the last thing we want to say about the Titans. I think it's not a bad call. What do you make of that? What about the overlooking of Luke Bailey, who's been the co-captain for ages? All of a sudden, he's out of it. Are they looking to push Luke Bailey out the door next, like they've already pushed out Prince?
Well, they could be. I don't know if he's recently re-signed. I'm not sure he has, but I think he is towards the end of his career anyway. And despite the fact that they're sort of lacking in a bit of playmaking experience, their pack actually looks pretty good.
Looks real good, yeah.
Which I think that'll keep them in a few games, but I don't know whether they've got enough points in them to sort of worry the top teams.
I think that's probably a fair call with the Titans. I tend to agree. I think they've got a very hard-working pack. You got Bailey and Nate Miles in the front row, Matt Strama, as you say. And they got Ash Harrison, who's just re-signed for another couple of years, Dave Taylor and Greg Bird. That's a very, very good, hard-working forward pack there that could have a big impact, Lee.
The big thing I see is that, over time we've seen the Titans go from looking to be sensational when they first came in and having the support of the Gold Coast to now they've really got to start performing again. And that's, we've seen the crowds drop. We've seen, the support level on the Gold Coast drop. There's been more pressure with the Gold Coast Suns coming in and other bits and pieces. There's been some off-field turmoil as well. That's the easy way of putting it. Now, this is the year that they've all got to step up, and otherwise, you could almost see the Titans sort of, 2 or 3 years' time struggling to fill a stadium half full, quarter full.
I think that leads to a good point I've made on the show before in the past, is that compare the way they booted off the Gold Coast Titans in the NRL. They came in and made an immediate impact. They had a lot of strong players, a lot of senior players straight away, as opposed to the Suns and the Giants, where they built it from the kids up. It seems that they are looking right at the future, whereas the Titans are looking, we need success straight away to establish ourselves. And I think I think the AFL probably got it right, and the Titans are now struggling, paying the price a few years later. But we're out of time there for the NRL segment. Ethan, thank you very much for being on the line with us. We'll enjoy having your company on the show in future weeks. Thank you very much.
No, looking forward to it. Looking forward to the first taste of rugby league tonight. Should be good.
Absolutely, can't wait. Thank you very much. We'll go to a quick break now. When we come back, it's time to wrap up the show with a bit of motorsport.
R&W, Richardson and Wrench, 8 Dennis Road, Springwood, services all of your real estate needs across a broad section of Brisbane's south side, specialising in residential sales and property management, commercial sales and leasing, along with body corporate management. They provide realistic market appraisal valuations and will also provide a free market rental appraisal. They're professional, friendly and care about their clients. Call our station sponsor R&W today to discuss your real estate requirements on 3808 8878. If you want the latest and best movies on the big screen, plus a delicious morning tea, all for a very low admission price, then you must come along to the 101 FM monthly movies at station sponsor, the Hyperplex Cinemas Logan Home. Keep listening for details of the next screening and then join us, Logan City's 101 FM.
Join us each Saturday morning from 5 for Today's Country on your station 101 FM.
Now back to Darren Madigan and Karen Mitchell with Saturday Sportscene on 101 FM.
Yes, welcome back to Sportzscene here on 101 FM. It is 49 minutes past 9. Your next fresh news update coming up at 10 o'clock at the top of the hour. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatschek and Darren Madigan with you. It's time to talk a bit of motorsport. And Lee, you tipped it last week on the show and you got it dead right with Casey Stoner that it was in the works. In the next couple of days it would come out and be confirmed. It was confirmed. Casey Stoner will race with the 888 team next year in the Dunlop Series.
Such a surprise. I'm just, falling off my chair with sort of surprise there. And, it's been spoken about for quite a few months. As I said, you had some good sources who would inform me that was going to come out in the next couple of days, and certainly did. Backed with Pertec and Red Bull. It looked like a sister car to the main 888 cars. I've said it before that, he's got the talent there of the knowledge, just adapting that talent from 2 wheels to 4 wheels. He's got the best team around him. Be very interesting to see him go on the streets of Adelaide. Tough circuit to start with, and he should be good.
For the 888 team, is it a strategic move to get him now while he's still hot property, and to encourage sponsors? And obviously he's good at his trade, don't get me wrong, but striking while the iron's hot and not letting anyone else get him for this reason, as well as obviously potentially being a good driver for the 888 team, is it a good opportunity now to get a lot of people on board?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at if you read between the lines, you see that Stoner is supported by Red Bull. He's a Red Bull athlete. Well, Red Bull are a sponsor of 888 this year. They made that announcement. It all sort of ties in. You look at it when any time Stoner was at a racetrack, he was always in the 888 garage. And the other thing is that you look at Stoner and he'd only want to go with the best team, and 888 is the best team by far. Roland Dane runs a magnificent organisation, and there's no other place you'd rather go to, especially when you're learning. And that's what he's doing again. And he's probably, from what I understand, he's probably very similar to Whincup. We're very focused on the job when he's focused on the job. Enjoys his time away from the track as well. Roland Dane is also a big fan of 2 wheels and yachts at the same time, so the 2-wheel factor would have played in there, and an absolute professional, and that's what Roland Dane wants.
Sounds just like a perfect marriage, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It sounds like, Darren, it's going to be a benefit for everybody having him around the V8s, doesn't it?
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, you get a name like that floating around. There's a few other big names from overseas that have been around the place, like Alexander Pramat and all that sort of thing. So he's back again for the 2013 season, as far as I know. I mean, this season is looking great now. 4 manufacturers, or 3 and a bit, depending on how far Mercedes want to take it. As far as the series go, I'm really looking forward to this year. I mean, Lee knows for how many years I've been screaming for another manufacturer to come in. And it's starting to look like a touring car series again, like it should, and really, really looking forward to it. So, Casey Stoner, I can't wait for him to make the step up to the big leagues as soon as possible.
It's definitely going to be exciting. Talking about the new manufacturers that are in there, both the Mercedes and the Nissan cars have been unveiled in recent weeks and times. Lee, how competitive do you think they're going to be this year?
I would say they've got to be competitive to make it a success. There's actually aero testing of all 4 cars at the one place going on at East Sale at the RAF base over today, yesterday and tomorrow. I know I've heard rumours of Nissan having trouble trying to get their power plant up to spec, and trying to match what the Kelly team have previously had with Holden, etc. So that may be a bit of a worry, but they need, for this to be a success, they need to be reasonably competitive. I'm not going to say win or finish on the podium, but they need to be reasonably competitive from the outset. There's no question of that. We've got this car of the future scenario where everything's supposed to be pretty even, using supposedly the same chassis. All you're doing is putting your engine and having a slightly different aero package, but they, as I just keep saying, they need to be relatively competitive. Not win, not be straight out the box and I'm going to win. That's unrealistic. But to actually be around the mark and, top half the field. That's where they've got to be. At least 1 or 2 of those cars in there to be able to get there and make a success for the first year.
We lost Darren, have we? Darren,
Yeah.
you got thoughts on them?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, it's becoming a silhouette formula anyway, in a lot of ways. But look, just to have the extra names in there, it's just so important to have that from a manufacturer's point of view as well. Nismo, they're not going to muck around. They'll get things sorted out. If they're not totally competitive first up, it won't take them long to get there. Their history shows that. Mercedes, I mean, I'm not really sure how fair income Mercedes are, because really it's their tuning division, AMG, it's really just an engine thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Erebus are actually running the whole thing. They've got support from Mercedes, but it's not a Mercedes factory team, unlike where Nissan are heavily involved in the production. But certainly, it's still Mercedes. It's still using their products, still using their brand. And I think that the team at Erebus have been working very hard. I keep on referring to it as SBR in conversations as Stone Brothers Racing, but it's now Erebus Motorsport, which is one of the big turning points. And we'll discuss very quickly in a moment about the SBR v SVG moments with Shane van Gisbergen also announcing. But yeah,
I think it's really important too, from the point of view, if they want this business over in Austin, Texas, and that sort of thing to be some sort of a success, they need Nissan and
Nissan, as it is known in America, Darren. Nissan.
To be doing their thing, because I mean they're going to be names that they're going to recognise over there. I'm sure they're going to race over there as Chevrolet and Ford. But with the announcement over the last week or so too of the future of big family sedans in Australia for both Ford and Holden, they're going to need to be giving Australians an idea of where the models and that are going to be going, because that's going to be reflected in the names that are going to be out on the track.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's going to be a very interesting time over the next few years, and that's something I alluded to just a moment ago with Shane van Gisbergen. We've only got sort of 4 minutes left on the run, but Van Gisbergen announced last week that he'll be joining Techno Autosports after only last month citing that for personal reasons he was going to leave SBR. Comes out yesterday. Well, what a surprise. Stone Brothers Racing considering legal action against Shane van Gisbergen. And to be honest with you, it was coming. He signed a 3-year deal extension with them in April last year. The part of the termination or the separation agreement was the fact that he wouldn't drive a V8 supercar in 2013. 2014 beyond, well, Shane, the Stone Brothers Racing said, well, yeah, that's too long in the future. We don't know what's going to happen, etc.
I was about to ask you if they had grounds once they've agreed and signed off on the contract, the release. But if that was part of the deal, it sounds like he will be in a bit of trouble.
That's a part of the release. Stone Brothers haven't ruled out legal action, whether it's a case of, Van Giz sort of alluded to the fact that, is it a case of he didn't want to be at Erebus because Stone Brothers taking a real difference with Erebus taking over. But the big thing is that he said to them black and white that it was nothing to do with that. He just needed a break, needed to go back and race some quads and have some fun in New Zealand. He wasn't enjoying his racing. He gathered his team, and it turns out then he goes out and has some fun and then comes back and announces as Techno Autosport. So. It's disappointing to see that it may end up in the courts. Yeah. But a deal's a deal.
Yep.
And, Ross and Jimmy gave Shane their word. Shane gave Ross and Jimmy their word. And I have a feeling it's going to turn all very messy.
Sounds like it, Lee. Before we haven't got much long left in the show, but in the world of karting, which I know you know everything about the world of karting, Joseph Mawson has signed. He's going to go off and race in Europe. I've seen that's come out a bit of press about that during the week.
Yes, Joseph Mawson has announced he'll be based in Italy full-time this year, race for the Top Kart factory team. He actually flew out to Italy on Tuesday, landed there on Wednesday, took the track on Thursday. And he's racing this weekend at La Conca. Qualified 46th, not a great start, but he's still learning a track he's never been to, a team he's never raced at that level with before. Certainly a whole new experience for him, but it's great news for Australian karting and Australian motorsport to have.
And just quickly to finish off that point, what sort of pathway does it set up for him?
Basically, he follows the pathway of James Courtney, Ryan Briscoe, who spent many of their formative years over racing for factory teams in Europe. And then sort of went on to open wheelers. Joseph's got his sights set on open wheelers in the next couple of years.
Sure.
He's supported by the Australian Motorsport Foundation as a part of CAM, so he's got a bright future ahead of him.
Absolutely, something we'll be keeping track of. We've got to wrap it up there. All out of time for Sportscene for another week. Craig, Lee, Darren, thank you very much for being with us again, as always. Glenn Richardson's up next on 101 FM, so make sure you stay with us here. We'll be back same time next week, 8 till 10, so make sure you're listening. Thanks again for listening. Bye.